Hey everyone, what's up? Jeremy Kruis here. Today I'm going to be doing another Lightroom mobile video. I've been creating some presets or some styles that look like vintage film or the film look. So in this video I'll be doing a sort of step-by-step guide and how you can achieve this look in Lightroom Mobile. I'll also provide a link to this preset in the description below, so you can just download it there for free. So here's a photo that I'll be starting with. This is the look that I'll be going for. This is the before and after. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a version. So create a version. So I save this look and then I'm gonna go ahead and delete all the adjustments and we're gonna start from scratch. First off, I'm gonna start in the light tab and then I'm gonna decrease the highlights all the way, the whites pretty much all the way to, increase the shadows a bit, increase the blacks a bit. This is kind of to create sort of more dynamic range in the photo. And then I'm gonna go to the curves and to the main curve setting here. And then what we're gonna do is crush the blacks like so. And we're gonna bring down the shadow parts here to sort of give that fade. And then we're also gonna crush the highlights here. So get your curve looking something like that. And then increase the contrast. And let's see, play with the exposure a bit. I'll increase it just a tiny bit like that. And then in the color tab, so I'm gonna cool it down just a tiny bit, about there. Then I'm gonna adjust her skin tone right away because it looks a little too saturated and too yellow. So I'll decrease the saturation on her skin tones. The reds, I'm gonna bring them a little towards orange, decrease the saturation a tiny bit. The yellows, bring them towards orange as well, and decrease the saturation and bring down the luminance just a tiny bit. And then the hue of blue, put that towards greenish. And then the aqua color, bring it towards blue. There really isn't that much of that color in here. We do have, so that, yeah, that's pretty much it for the color mix. Now in the effects tab, I'm going to decrease the texture just by about 4 and then also the clarity by about 4. So -4, -2, just a tiny bit. And then the vignette, I'm gonna bring the vignette down and then decrease the midpoint of the vignette and then increase the feather all the way. So we kind of have it just focused on her. The lights up here are looking a little too sort of weird color. To make it a little more orange. So change the hue all the way down. Decrease the saturation a tiny bit there. I'm gonna decrease the saturation of her skin just a tiny bit as well. And then with film photos, they usually sort of have either a magenta-ish tint or a greenish tint in the shadows and in the highlights. So what I'm gonna do is go to the red curve and the green curve and just put these control points there. And what you can do is play around with, do you want some reddish in the shadows or some greenish in the shadows? In this case, I'm gonna use green. So got some green in the shadows there. I'm gonna bring down this curve down a bit. And blacks. So that's a pretty faded look we have going on here. Let's check out the before and the after. I'm gonna go to the effects tab now and go to the split toning. This is another way you can get the sort of shadows that are either magenta-ish or greenish tint. You can also do that with the highlights. So with the highlights, I'm gonna go over to this bluish greenish tint here and just play around a little bit with that. So if we go crazy, and then bring it back down. So I'll put a little bit of that in the highlights, about 20 of saturation, 19 or whatever. A little too much, make it maybe like 10 or 7. There we go. And then in the detail, I'm making sure the sharpening is all the way at 0, because when you bring up the sharpening, it kind of makes it look a little more digital. So I always make sure the sharpening is all the way down. And then I'm gonna put some grain. So in the effects tab, I'm gonna go down to grain, increase that about 70. I'm gonna reduce the size of the grain and then increase the roughness of it. And there you have it. There's the photo, so before and after. Yeah, so if you wanna download this preset, I'll leave a link in the description. But let's do one more photo. Now this photo was a raw photo I took with my camera. The previous one was just a photo I took on my phone. And so this type of editing can work in both, but you do have a little more flexibility with the raw photo. So this is before and then after. So I'm gonna, again, create a version of this one so that I can start from scratch. So let's reset all the adjustments. So we're starting from scratch here. I'm gonna start in the light tab, and then I'm gonna start off with the curves. So just bring down the shadows and then crush the blacks here. And then we're gonna crush the highlights as well. Just like that. And then I'm gonna increase the exposure a tiny bit. Put the highlights all the way down, shadows up a bit, whites like all the way down as well, blacks up a tiny bit. And then what I'm gonna do here is just add some contrast. And then the color, I'm gonna warm it up just a tiny bit and put some more magenta in there. I'm gonna go to the color mix, make the reds a little more orange and the skin tones a little bit more red, and decrease the saturation on them. Yellows, I'm gonna push those down to orange as well. And then the greens, make them more green and then lower the saturation on that. The aqua color towards blue, the blue towards aqua, just a tiny bit, not too much like that. Let's bring it about there. Saturation, luminance, I'm gonna up it just a tiny bit. A little more towards aqua, not too much. Right, that looks about good. Okay, we're done with that. So let's go back to the curves. Again, this one I'm gonna do a reddish tint in the shadows. So I'm gonna bring up the red curve here, just to sort of give that reddish in the shadows. So you can see here, see that? There we go. Just that slight reddish tint in the shadows. Give it that film look. Let's try adding something in the highlights, maybe here, up a little bit in the sort of greenish tint in the shadow, in the highlights I mean. So we'll bring that up, we'll test that out. I'll put it maybe about 6. And I'm going to increase the temperature, warm it up just a bit more. Maybe about there. And then detail, make sure that it's at 0. Effects, the texture. This you can play around with, but I usually put it just down a tiny bit. Clarity also down just a tiny bit. And then the haze. Oh, what I did with this one too is in the color tab, bring the vibrance up, and then the saturation, bring that down just a tiny bit. And then let's add some grain. We all love that grain. So I'm gonna put the grain up pretty high, size, lower it, roughness, bring it up. And let's see what else we can do. I think that's about it. So again, I'll leave a link to the preset for this in the description so you can download it. Otherwise, just practice around with these tools and get yourself learning how to edit photos like this. So as long as you just went along with me, hopefully that was really helpful. So again, let's look at the before and after. All right, well, there you have it. Hopefully this was helpful to you, and make sure to leave this video a like if it was helpful, and then also make sure to check out some of my other videos on my channel, mainly about filmmaking, photography, travel here in the Philippines, and just other camera tech and stuff. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Anyways, that's gonna be it for today. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.